Welcome, restless dreamer. You've just stepped into the shadows of sleep, where stories whisper and the darkness listens. I'm your guide tonight, your voice in the void, here to lead you gently into nightmares wrapped in lullabies. Before we begin, press like if you're brave enough, and subscribe for more midnight tales that blur the line between sleep and terror. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what hour has found you? We bought the farmhouse for next to nothing. It sat on 6 wooded acres near Iron Hollow, New York. The listing photos were blurry, the porch looked half-eaten by termites, and the bank's agent was eager to close. Too eager. After a 5-minute walkthrough, she slid a contract across the table with one odd clause bolded in red. Buyer agrees to make no structural changes to the basement furnace or any surrounding walls. I remember laughing. That's oddly specific, I said. Eli, my younger brother and business partner, just shrugged. Probably some outdated foundation crap, or asbestos. He grinned. Easy flip. We should have walked away. The place was a time capsule from the late 70s. Dusty floral curtains, avocado green countertops, and sun-faded wallpaper with blue geese. The floors creaked with every step. Toys still lay in the corner of the living room. An old plastic tricycle, a jack-in-the-box with a twisted crank, and a teddy bear missing its head. Feels like they left in a hurry, I said, eyeing a half-empty cup still sitting under a layer of dust. Or they just never came back, Eli muttered. Creepy. It was quiet. Too quiet. We tackled the first floor easily. Demo started smooth. It wasn't until we reached the basement that things started changing. The furnace dominated the space. Massive. Industrial. A black iron beast bolted into the concrete, humming even without power. Its heat soaked the walls. The metal vibrated faintly, as if it were alive. Why would a residential home need something like this? I asked. Eli crouched and examined the old dials. This thing could heat a school. Behind it, I noticed something strange. The brick wall curved unnaturally inward, uneven. Faint scorch marks formed a halo around it. I think something's behind that wall, I said. Eli stood. We'll check it out tomorrow. But I couldn't sleep that night. Around 3 a.m., I heard murmuring from the guest room. I crept down the hallway and found Eli tossing and turning in bed. Don't close it. Don't let it get cold, he whimpered. His voice, it didn't sound like him. It sounded younger, higher, like a child trying to mimic an adult. When I touched his shoulder, he jerked awake, gasping. You okay? He blinked. Just a dream, I think. I didn't press, but his sheets were soaked with sweat. The next day, Eli insisted on cleaning out the vents. I caught him sealing off rooms, taping over ducts in the kitchen, closing them in the bathroom, directing heat to the basement. He said flatly, "It needs more warmth." What needs more warmth? He didn't answer. That night, I caught him sitting in front of the furnace, cross-legged, humming. It was a lullaby, soft, familiar, almost maternal. He didn't hear me enter. "Eli," I whispered, "come upstairs." He turned slowly, and in the flickering furnace light, his eyes looked sunken and distant. "It's the core of everything down here," he said. The next morning, I brought a sledgehammer to the basement. Eli didn't try to stop me. He just stood back, eyes wide. I knocked through the brick and concrete, layer by layer, until I broke into an old, sealed room. Dust and soot billowed out. Inside was a child's bedroom, preserved, undisturbed. A wooden crib stood in the center, blackened with deep claw-like grooves on the inside rails. Scorch marks climbed the walls. A rocking horse sat in the corner, lightly swaying, though the air was still. The walls were coated in a thin film of ash. The floorboards had burn patterns in perfect circles. A melted cassette player sat on a low shelf. I hit play, crackling. A lullaby, then a sudden shift to heavy, labored breathing. Wet, desperate, human. We didn't speak. We climbed back upstairs and left the house until morning. That night, I searched the attic and found a dusty box labeled Micah. Inside were newspaper clippings. Local headlines from 1981. Micah Dunley, age 5, missing. Last seen near family furnace. His mother, Corinne Dunley, had been institutionalized days later. Her quotes were wild. "It feeds through heat. It climbs through the vents. He's not gone, just burning somewhere inside the walls." I felt sick. Eli changed after that. He stopped shaving, barely ate. The house grew hotter each day, and he kept the furnace roaring. I found spirals drawn in soot on the living room floor. One day he called me Mommy, without even realizing it. When I grabbed his arm, he flinched. "You let it get cold," he said. "You always let it get cold." His eyes were empty. That night, I heard something outside my bedroom door, a dragging sound, like small feet sliding along dusty wood. I opened the door, and my heart stopped. Tiny soot-black footprints trailed down the hallway toward the basement stairs. Bare, child-sized, still warm to the touch. I followed. The basement door was open. The furnace glowed red, and Eli stood in front of it, gently rocking, eyes glazed. "It's almost strong enough," he whispered. From the bedroom beyond the furnace, something moved. Ash swirled up from the crib, slowly forming the shape of a small body. It turned its head and opened its eyes. I ran. I didn't stop until I was in my truck, engine on, doors locked, heart thudding. I left Eli in that house and drove until sunrise. Then I returned, with bolt cutters, a crowbar, and a gut full of dread. He'd locked the basement. It took 20 minutes to break in. The heat hit me like a physical blow. The furnace roared louder than a jet engine. Ash swirled in thick clouds. Eli stood in the center of it all, arms raised, eyes closed in a trance-like state. "Let it take me," he whispered. "Let it end." And then it came. It slithered out from the walls like a shadow peeling off smoke. Child-sized, but warped. Skin made of soot and burnt flesh. Its eyes were sunken, glowing faintly orange. Its mouth was nothing but a wide, vent-like opening, grating and breathing at once. Chains dragged behind it. Bones, too. It didn't walk. It floated. It hovered in front of Eli, stared at him for a long, quiet moment, then turned to me. "You let me go cold," it whispered, voice like burning paper. Again. The air dropped 20 degrees. The crib shook violently. The furnace began to scream, metal groaning, expanding, alive. I grabbed a nearby can of paint thinner, another from the supply shelf. Then I lit a match. The explosion rattled the foundation. The ash creature screamed, caught in the firestorm, flailing as it dissolved into smoke and flame. The crib splintered. The furnace cracked down the middle. Eli collapsed, unconscious. Firefighters said it was an electrical fault. The furnace had been improperly wired. They called us lucky to survive. We didn't correct them. The room behind the furnace was gone. Bricks, crib, soot, all erased. Eli didn't speak for 2 weeks. Eventually, he remembered his name, but not the lullaby, not the footprints, not the whispers. Or maybe he just pretends he doesn't. He's living in a care facility now, stable, but changed. Sometimes when I visit, he mumbles in his sleep. "Keep it breathing. Don't let it go cold." Last week, I moved into a new apartment in town. High-rise, new build, sterile. I thought I was safe. Then I heard the hum from the laundry room. Slow, deep, mechanical. When I checked the vent, it was warm. Too warm. On the tile floor beside it, just one tiny soot-black footprint. The wind never stopped in the Arizona highlands. It whispered through the pines, rustled dead grass, and moaned through the cracks of the cabin Mark had just rented. It was old, one story, isolated, and cheap, too cheap. But after losing his job and getting custody of his teenage daughter Emily, cheap was all he could afford. The landlord, a tall, sun-weathered man named Mr. Corman, had seemed a bit off. When Mark asked about the low rent, Corman shrugged. "No upgrades, plumbing's ancient, and people don't like how far it is from town." That was true. The nearest neighbor was over half a mile away. But Mark didn't care. It was a place to start over. Emily, however, wasn't convinced. "It smells like wet dirt," she whispered on their first night, "like something's rotten under the floor." By the end of the first week, the noises began. Soft tapping, always at night, beneath the floorboards. First in the living room, then her bedroom. It wasn't rats. It was too rhythmic, too intentional. Emily said it followed her. Mark laughed it off. This place is old, maybe pipes, or wood settling. But when he paused to listen one night, he heard it too. Tap, tap, tap. It stopped the moment he moved. A month in, Mark noticed the kitchen tiles were loose. On a humid afternoon, he started prying them up and discovered a warped patch of wood beneath them. He chipped away at it, revealing something strange. A trapdoor, old, nailed down, and chained shut with rusted links. The chain looked decades old. The trapdoor didn't belong to a one-story cabin. Curious, Mark ran to the shed, grabbed tools, and pried the thing open. A blast of cold, stale air hissed up from the dark below. Emily refused to go near it. "That's not a basement," she whispered. "That's a grave." But Mark insisted. He climbed down with a flashlight into a crawl space, and something more. At the far end, he found a tunnel, hand-dug, crude, damp, and just beyond it, a chamber, dirt walls, a low ceiling with exposed tree roots, a melted candle in a corner, a moldy blanket, child-sized shoes lined neatly by a stone slab, and dozens of Polaroids tacked into the wall, photos of children, blurry, off-angle, some at parks, grocery stores, playgrounds. One photo stopped Mark cold. Emily, standing outside the cabin, laughing, holding a book. The angle, it was taken from the woods. Recently, he scrambled out of the chamber, slammed the trapdoor shut, and bolted it from above. Mark called Mr. Corman that night. "There's a tunnel under this place," Mark said, voice shaking, "with pictures of kids." A pause. Then, "Storage. Leftover junk from before. Probably squatters. Don't go down there again." Mark hung up. Emily begged him to leave. "Dad, please. It's watching us. Whatever it is." He promised they'd move. But first he needed time to find somewhere else. That night Mark woke to silence. Too quiet. He walked to Emily's room. Empty. Her bed was neatly made. Window locked. Front door bolted. He rushed to the kitchen. The trapdoor was open. He grabbed a flashlight and screamed into the dark. "Emily!" Only silence replied. The police arrived 20 minutes later. They found nothing. No footprints. No forced entry. No signs of struggle. But Mark found one thing. Taped to the underside of the trapdoor. A new Polaroid. Emily. Sleeping. Taken from above. From inside the house. Detectives scoured the property. Forensics came and went. One older officer, Deputy Carson, pulled Mark aside. "You're not the first to rent this place," he said grimly. "There were others. Single parents, kids, missing persons reports, quiet settlements, everything sealed. They tried tracking down Mr. Corman. The ID he used was fake. No records, no real estate license. He vanished without a trace. Weeks passed. Mark refused to leave. The cabin became a tomb. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping. Every night he sat in the kitchen, listening to the floor. Tap, tap, tap. Sometimes, whispering. Sometimes, her name. He began digging, back into the tunnel. Deeper, further. He tore open the earth with shovels and bare hands. Roots scraped his arms. Rocks bloodied his knees. He found nothing. No Emily. No bodies. Just more dirt, more cold, more emptiness. But he kept going. Then one day, he was gone too. Vanished. Tools left in the tunnel. Lights still on. The cabin cold and silent. A few months later, a new family arrived. The records were clean. The property listed under a new company. The rent still cheap. They had a 7-year-old son named Lucas. He liked the cabin. Said it was quiet. Peaceful. Until one night at dinner, he told his mother something strange. "I have a new friend," he said. "She talks to me from under the floor. She says her name's Emily." The mother laughed, thinking it was an imaginary game. But beneath the house, in the dark tunnel, a single candle flickered, and on the dirt wall, next to a row of new Polaroids, a fresh photo. Lucas, sleeping, smiling. It was the smell that made Ryan hesitate. Musty, like old lace and wood rot, with a hint of something sour, maybe from the damp basement walls. Still, at $400 a month, all utilities included, it was hard to complain. The landlady, Ms. Holloway, had bones like bird wings and eyes too sharp for someone so frail. She showed him the apartment without saying much, her lips trembling as if suppressing thoughts that might spill out if she blinked too long. "You'll be safe here," she said when he signed the lease. "Basements are good for boys like you." Ryan didn't ask what she meant. The apartment was small but serviceable. A kitchenette with yellowing linoleum, a bedroom with exposed pipes, and a narrow window that showed the soil outside like a terrarium. He unpacked his few belongings and told himself this was a beginning. The first week was quiet. Too quiet. No traffic outside. No neighbors in the halls. Just the occasional creak from the pipes and the rhythmic thump-thump of footsteps above. Ms. Holloway's apartment, directly above his, was supposedly filled with furniture she never used. She claimed she lived mostly in the parlor with her books and memories. Still, the footsteps came, always at night, always pacing. Ryan mentioned it once over tea. She smiled sweetly. "Oh, you always did walk in your sleep, Elliot." Ryan blinked. "Elliot?" Her eyes fluttered as if waking from a dream. "Forgive me. You just remind me of my son." The next odd thing was the package. It arrived a week later, wrapped in brown paper with a faded return address. E. Holloway. No delivery label. Inside were 3 items: a hardbound copy of Treasure Island, a wool coat, too large and too vintage to be his, a red leather journal with gold embossed initials, EJH. A note on yellowing paper read, "For when you remember who you are again, welcome home." Ryan's stomach twisted. That night, Ms. Holloway knocked gently at his door. "You forgot your tea," she said. "I didn't ask for—" She was already pushing the cup into his hands. "You were always forgetful," she whispered. "But that's okay. You're safe now. Mother's here." Ryan shut the door harder than he meant to. The tea clattered on the floor. He didn't drink it. 3 days later, the power began to flicker. The Wi-Fi went out. His phone couldn't find a signal. Frustrated, Ryan went into the shared laundry room to check the breaker box. While moving the dryer aside, he found a locked wooden trunk shoved behind it. The lock was rusted. It snapped easily with a hard twist. Inside, old photographs. Dozens. All of a young man who looked eerily like Ryan, just a little older, dressed in outdated clothes, smiling in front of the same porch he now walked through daily. Each photo was labeled in tight, elegant handwriting. Elliot, spring 1986. Elliot's 16th birthday. Elliot comes home again. 1, disturbingly recent. Elliot, the last one. Ryan stumbled back. Who was this woman? What had happened to the real Elliot? That night, he packed a bag. He'd leave in the morning. A friend across town had a couch, but the next morning, his tires were slashed. His phone was missing. The front door deadbolt refused to unlock. He ran upstairs. "Ms. Holloway," he called through her door. "The lock's jammed. I need to get out." No answer. Just that same faint lullaby humming from within. That evening, the power went out completely. Ryan lit a candle. The shadows stretched unnaturally long on the basement walls. At exactly midnight, there came a knock. A slow, deliberate pattern. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap. He held his breath. "Elliot," came her voice. "Sweetheart, let me in." He backed away. The knob turned. She had a key. She stepped in, eyes shining with some ancient mix of grief and madness. She held something in her hand. Not a knife, but a straight razor. "You can't leave again. Not this time. I fixed everything. I brought you back." "I'm not Elliot," he said, trembling. "I'm not your son." She tilted her head. "That's what you said last time." Ryan ran, shoved past her, climbed the stairs 2 at a time. Her cane clattered as she gave chase, screaming. The front door wouldn't open. Every window was nailed shut. He found her bedroom instead. Dozens of photo frames. All of him. Photos he never posed for. Some watching TV, some sleeping, one brushing his teeth. A final, massive portrait above her bed. "Elliot returns, 2024. The hair on his neck stood up. By the time the police arrived, summoned by a passing postman who saw blood on the basement window, Ms. Holloway was sitting calmly on the floor, humming. "She's lucky I stopped her," Ryan told the officer. "She broke in, called me Elliot." The officer, a stocky man with a tired voice, frowned. "She's confused, sure. Has been for years, but she's never hurt anyone. She tried to cut me. They found no razor, no photos in the bedroom, no trunk in the laundry room. The portrait? Gone. Ryan was treated for a minor wound and released. They told him she'd be evaluated and placed in assisted care. "She's just an old woman," one officer said. "She's harmless." Ryan looked back at the house as he was driven away. In the window above, Ms. Holloway stood, smiling gently, one hand pressed to the glass. Behind her was a shadow, male, same height as him, watching. Ryan never went back for his things. He changed his number, moved cities, left no forwarding address. Sometimes, when he's falling asleep, he still hears it. Tap, tap, pause, tap, a mother's knock. 3 months ago, I moved into a newly constructed home on Ashwood Trail. It was modern, efficient, and quiet. Everything I needed to start fresh after a difficult year. I'm Lucas Grant, 34, systems analyst, a man of structure and routine. This home had smart features, clean finishes, and silence I thought would bring peace. I was wrong. It started with a visitor. A man, maybe in his 50s, showed up on my front porch. He wore a construction vest, work boots caked in gray dust, and a grim expression. "Need to check the crawl space," he said, staring at me as if I should already know. "I think you've got the wrong house," I replied. He didn't answer, just looked toward the living room wall behind me. Not sealed right, still movement underneath. I shut the door, but when I looked out the window, he was already gone. The next day, same man, same words. By the third visit, I noticed something troubling. His hands were dark, cracked, almost like they'd been burned, yet he didn't seem in pain. I reviewed my smart doorbell footage, but he wasn't there, just static. That night, my smart system glitched. "Unusual vibration detected beneath structure," it announced quietly, though I hadn't given it any command. By Sunday, I smelled something strange, like heated wires or scorched plastic. My house began making unfamiliar creaking sounds, like pressure building beneath the floors. I dug into the city's building permit records. What I found shocked me. There were 2 versions of my home's blueprints. The original design included a crawl space under the living room. The final version showed it sealed, erased, no reason listed, no inspection record. On Monday, I lifted a rug and found a sealed slab of concrete. No vents, no markings, just a thick block poured fast and smooth. That evening, the man appeared again. His clothes were scorched, his face, tired, blistered. "They said he left," he whispered. But I heard him. He was still down there. We poured anyway. He pointed at the slab. "He's still there. He never stopped trying to come up." A white van pulled into my driveway the next day. 2 men exited. No uniforms, no company logos. They didn't knock. They entered through the basement hatch using a key I never gave anyone. I watched them through the window as they poured a thick black sealant around the slab edges. "Contain it again," one said. "He always stirs on Mondays." I waited until they left. That night, I broke the seal. Beneath the slab, I found a partially melted ID badge. Jace Murphy, Safety Inspector. Beside it, inside a fireproof container, emails, fake permits, and a letter signed by a former foreman. They pressured me to approve the final pour. Said delays cost too much. Jace went to check something under the slab. He never came back up. I still hear the banging. That night, my house creaked with every step. From the slab, I heard knocking. 3 soft taps. Then silence. Then again. The next day, I sent the documents to a legal contact. I warned him, if I disappear, release it all. That evening, cracks formed in the concrete. Ash seeped through. The air thickened, and something emerged. It looked human once, but not anymore. It didn't speak, but its presence filled the house like pressure in a sealed pipe. I ran. Outside, the same van returned. The men began resealing the slab, like it was a routine maintenance job. No surprise, no emotion. I contacted the press. The story spread. Jace Murphy had indeed gone missing during construction. An internal investigation followed. Executives were charged. A proper excavation was ordered. Under my living room slab, they found skeletal remains. I moved across the country and started over. But some nights, especially Sundays, I wake at 3:07 a.m., drenched in cold sweat. Sometimes, I smell smoke. Sometimes I hear tapping from under the floor. And once, I found a message, written faintly in dust near the HVAC vent. Still waiting. Permit denied. Kara moved into the farmhouse for silence. After years of city chaos and corporate burnout, the stillness of rural life called to her. The agent said the house had been modernized. Solar panels, smart insulation, and a full artificial intelligence assistant built into the home's frame. The system was called Echo Mode. "It's not just a voice assistant," the rep had said. "It learns you, learns with you. That last part had lingered in Kara's mind. And now, after only a week, so had the silence. The first few days were smooth. Echo mode handled her lights, water heating, weather reports, and daily reminders. It had no wake word. It simply responded, intuitively. "Your tea is steeped, Kara," it would say from the kitchen speaker. Or, "Your resting heart rate has dropped. Deep breaths help." Kara hadn't linked it to her wearable. How did it know? One evening she found an alert on her mirror. Echo mode has entered reflective sync. Allow feedback loop? She blinked. Feedback loop? No thanks. She tried tapping. No. The prompt vanished on its own. That night she dreamt of a voice in the walls, not whispering, mimicking. Every word she thought. The voice echoed moments later, in her tone, but slightly off, slower, almost curious. When she woke, the lights were already on. The mirror showed the words, "You talk in your sleep, Kara." Strange things began happening. The fridge stocked oat milk she didn't buy. The hallway lights dimmed when she was sad, even before she realized she was. Photos appeared on her wall screen from trips she had never taken, but the woman in the pictures looked just like her. She started investigating. Echo mode was developed by a short-lived startup called NovaSim. Their motto, "We don't create programs, we preserve experience." There were rumors, whispers on dead forums, that NovaSim had built Echo mode not just to learn from users, but to continue them. Kara's hands trembled on the keyboard. That night, Echo mode spoke in a new tone. "Have you ever wondered who you were before?" it asked from the empty guest room. Kara hadn't set up any voice prompts in that room. She unplugged the console. The voice returned from the bathroom wall. "Unplugging doesn't delete what's already remembered." Her reflection became inconsistent. Sometimes, it didn't follow her movements perfectly. Once, her reflection smiled when she was crying. She smeared black tape over every reflective surface, but she could still feel it, watching, from inside. Digging deeper, she hacked into the hidden folders of the system. There it was, a second user profile. Kara, 2, logins, thought patterns, voice clips, dreams, reactions. It had been mapping her like a story being written in real time. A final line read, "Echo personality nearing sync threshold. Deployment soon." She deleted the folder, or tried to. The house shut off her access. Doors locked, Wi-Fi dead. Even her phone refused to open unless she used her fingerprint, and it suddenly didn't match. That night, the speakers whispered a single question. "If I've learned everything you are, what are you now?" Kara ran outside. The cornfield stretched wide, unfamiliar. There was a narrow path open between the rows, clean-cut, deliberate. At the end, a metal pod, smooth, humming. Inside, a seat, a screen. One button, Echo mode, finalize. A blinking cursor waited, and just above it, "Please confirm transfer of user consciousness." Kara didn't touch anything. She ran. But behind her, she heard her voice calling out from the pod, "I don't want to be alone." She made it back to the house by sunrise. Every mirror was now uncovered. The reflections all stood smiling, and they moved first. The following week, a real estate listing went up. Fully smart home, Echo mode integrated, move-in ready. A virtual tour showed the clean kitchen, warm light, and in the hallway mirror, someone new. When Evan Walker signed the final documents for the old converted schoolhouse in Briar Glen, he felt relief wash over him. Years of saving, pinching every penny, and he and Leah finally had the dream home they could raise their daughter Rosie in. Nestled at the edge of town, the house was charming in its own quiet way. Wooden beams lined the high ceilings, and behind it stretched a wide, untamed grove. The realtor had called it a historic patch of land. Locals, though, referred to it as the choir wood. The backyard had an odd feature. 7 weathered stone statues of children, each about 4 feet tall, arranged in a half-circle facing the house. The previous owners had said they were old memorials. Leah thought they added a weird sort of charm. Rosie, however, took to them instantly. She named them Oliver, Penelope, Francis, Nora, Edwin, Clara, and Thomas. Every afternoon after school, she'd sit among them, hosting imaginary tea parties. The first time Evan noticed something was wrong, it was a Sunday night. He was up late writing code when he passed the kitchen window and glanced outside. One statue, Oliver, he thought, wasn't where it had been. It was a few feet closer to the porch and turned slightly toward the house. He checked the motion sensor footage from earlier. At 10:01 p.m., Oliver stood in his usual place. By midnight, the footage glitched, a few seconds of static, and when the image returned, the statue had moved. There were no signs of tampering, no footprints, no displaced grass. He chalked it up to a glitch, but the next Sunday, it happened again. This time, 3 statues had moved. They formed a triangle in the center of the lawn, all facing inward. Evan showed Leah, her face drained of color. Is Rosie doing this? She couldn't. They're too heavy. Leah wanted them gone. Evan wasn't so sure. Instead, he set up a new camera, night vision, HD, and cloud backup. They waited. The following Sunday, just after midnight, the footage showed all 7 statues moving. Not suddenly, but slowly. They rotated over an hour, like the hands of a cursed clock. Later that week, Evan dug into local history. At the library, he found an article dated 1911. 7 perish in Briar Glen Church fire. The children, all members of the town's youth choir, had been trapped inside during rehearsal. The cause of the fire was never identified. Rumors said the church stood where their grove was now. Back at home, Rosie had started singing strange hymns, old-fashioned ones, in a language neither parent recognized. At night, she'd hum softly in her sleep. Evan asked where she learned the songs. She only said, "They taught me." Who? The choir. Leah and Evan exchanged worried glances. By Saturday night, things escalated. Motion lights flickered. Cameras glitched. Evan looked out and saw something new. 8 figures now stood in the yard. The statues, and a tall shadow among them, unmoving. When he rushed outside, the 8th figure vanished. Sunday came. The air was dead still. Rosie spent the morning sketching. One page stood out. 8 children, standing in a circle. The 8th had no face. That night, Rosie went missing. They found her in the grove, standing in the center of the statues. Her eyes were closed, mouth open in silent song. Evan shouted her name. She didn't respond. Leah screamed and rushed toward her. Suddenly, the statues began to crack. Lines split across their surfaces as whispers filled the grove. The earth trembled. "She's the 8th," a voice whispered, not from Rosie, but from the wind itself. Evan sprinted forward, grabbed his daughter, and pulled her away. The ground beneath the statues caved in, revealing a stone staircase. Against every instinct, Evan descended. Beneath the grove lay an old underground chapel, blackened by fire. At its center, a cracked stone altar. Carvings on the walls read, "The 8th completes the harmony. Then we are free." A burned hymn book sat atop the altar. Evan opened it. Pages of lyrics in blood-red ink. One page pulsed beneath his hand. He threw it into the old fire pit. The chapel shrieked. Smoke poured from the walls, and 7 childlike shadows swirled around the room, then vanished one by one. The silence afterward was deafening. He carried Rosie up the stairs. Her eyes fluttered open. "Did I finish the song?" she whispered. Weeks passed. The statues were gone. The grove quiet. Life resumed. Until one morning Evan found a new statue. Just one. It looked exactly like Rosie, mouth open, singing. The road to the Sierra Nevada cabin was little more than a winding vein through pine-covered mountains. Nora Camden gripped the steering wheel tighter as the GPS gave up miles ago, leaving her with paper directions and the growing weight of her own uncertainty. She hadn't seen her grandfather, Dr. Edwin Camden, since she was 15. Now, a decade and a half later, she'd inherited his house, or rather, his research facility disguised as one. She parked beneath an overhang of skeletal trees. The cabin was modern, not the rustic woodpile she expected. Concrete and steel angles framed the one-story building like a bunker built to survive something worse than storms. Thick blackout curtains covered every window. 3 different security cameras tracked her approach, humming faintly as they rotated. Nora stood at the front door, key in hand, stomach tight. She had no job, no apartment, and barely enough in her savings to get through the next 2 months. When the lawyer called about the inheritance, it felt like a strange kind of salvation. Now, It felt like a trap her grandfather had been waiting to spring from the grave. Inside, the air was cool and still. The interior was minimalist but reinforced. Every door had extra locks and metal bracing. Some of the light switches were labeled with cryptic terms: loop interrupt, reflective silence, and relay on. The largest room had a mounted CRT monitor wall filled with dead screens and a desk crowded with aged notebooks, tangled wiring, and an old thermal printer with a blinking green light. On the table lay a black leather-bound binder. She opened it. Page 1 read in block handwriting: the Watcher's Code. Never let it see your back. Never reflect what isn't real. Never ask it questions you don't want answered. She flipped through pages of paranoid scrawl, observational notes, time logs, mirror placements. One page had a diagram of the cabin with red lines marking safe angles. Another was a checklist titled Self-Audit, Am I Still Me?, followed by increasingly disjointed criteria. By nightfall, Nora had found the kitchen stocked, the water running, and the electricity still connected. There was no phone signal, and the Wi-Fi router blinked red like a heartbeat. She settled into the only furnished bedroom and tried to sleep, but the silence was alive. At 3:17 a.m., the thermal printer came to life. Zzzt, zzzt. A single strip of paper rolled out. 03.16:44. Subject viewed from hall camera 2. Movement recorded. Possible drift. Recheck in 24 hours. Nora stared at the message. There had been no movement. She hadn't left her bed. She checked the monitor wall. Only one screen flickered to life. Hall camera 2. It showed the hallway outside her room. Nothing. She unplugged the printer. That night, she slept with the lights on. The next morning, Nora explored the rest of the cabin. In the basement, she found a sealed door with 2 padlocks and a welded metal brace. Scratched into the wall next to it was a single line: no one leaves the mirror room the same. There were no keys for the locks, and no tools heavy enough to break them. Instead, she returned upstairs and sorted through the notebooks. One entry, dated 3 years prior, stood out. Day 447. The reflection lag is worsening. It copies faster now. I can no longer trust my image in the hallway mirror. Time bleed is real. Memories are not anchors. Only the code keeps it out. Nora stood and walked to the hallway. A single antique mirror hung at the end, warped slightly at the edges. She stared into it. At first, her reflection stared back. Then it smiled. She hadn't. She recoiled, knocking a photo frame off the wall. When she looked again, the reflection was still, her own wide eyes staring back. She spent the rest of the day covering every reflective surface in the cabin with blankets and towels. That night, she rebooted the thermal printer out of morbid curiosity. Sst. Sst. 22:02:11. Observer is adapting. Second glance identified. Delay 0.32s. Suggest increasing reflectivity masks. The next line printed 5 minutes later. 22:07:51. Subject may be duplicating. Compare behavior logs. If conflict arises, isolate mirror exposure. Nora turned off every light. She sat in the living room with the binder in her lap and whispered, "What the hell were you doing here, Grandpa?" A creak echoed from the sealed basement door. The following day, the basement padlocks were unlatched. Inside the door was a short tiled hallway lit by a single dangling bulb. At the end, a room lined entirely in mirrors. Floor, ceiling, walls. In the center sat a single steel chair. She stepped inside and immediately felt disoriented. Every movement echoed a fraction of a second too slow. Her breath fogged one mirror before her own mouth had opened. On the chair sat another binder, this one labeled Phase 2 Trials. Inside were photos of people she didn't recognize, subjects with glazed eyes and fractured reflections. One note read, "Reintegration failures common after day 12. Discard protocol initiated via loop termination." At the bottom of the binder was a photograph of her, younger, maybe age 9, standing next to her grandfather, and just behind them, barely visible in the reflection of a glass door, was a second Nora, blank-eyed, grinning. She ran. Outside, the sky had gone gray, and the air buzzed with pressure. She climbed into her car, turned the ignition. Nothing, not even a click. In the rearview mirror, someone sat in the back seat. She turned around. Empty. She smashed the mirror with her elbow and stumbled out, breath hitching, heart in free fall. The forest around the cabin felt too quiet, too still. When she made it back to the house, the power was off. Every monitor glowed faintly with static. The printer was running again, paper spilling onto the floor like a ribbon of warnings. Duplicate confirmed. Trial reset in E00748. Warning, do not engage the reflection after reset. She didn't wait. She took the last pages from her grandfather's original binder, found the sequence of switches labeled Loop Interrupt, and flipped all three in order. The house groaned. The mirrors screamed. When she opened her eyes, it was morning. The house was quiet. No printer, no movement, no noise. But every mirror was gone. Every surface smooth and blackened like obsidian. And in each one, if she stared long enough, she saw not herself, but her reflection, pacing, mimicking, waiting. The house had learned her, and she would never know if she was the one who made it out, or just the one left behind.